Hello, this is Walter Barker again, and I got about 8 minutes to teach you how to remember names and faces, so we're going to try to do that. How to remember names and faces. Of course, you can email me at wbprotime@gmail.com. Okay, we've got about 5 minutes. If you've ever heard the expression, do I have to draw you a picture? Well, I guess I do. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with this. We're going to draw a person's face here. And you're going to use the face to remember the names and faces. That kind of makes sense. We had talked about earlier that if you take a link, here's a chain. Here's a chain. We're going to put that on top of his head. And you link it to a location, and we're going to put some buildings here. A little set of buildings on his forehead. Okay. Link to a location with pictures. We're going to draw little picture frames as his eyes. Little pictures. Okay, and then we're going to take words, a little word stamp, and we're going to make it a little word stamp as his nose, a little rubber stamp as his little nose. And then we're going to stick in a little room here, we're going to make a little room, and we're going to put a bunch of little pins in the room, little stick pins. So that covers the 5 links to form, or 5 steps to remember. Anytime that you link something to a specific location with pictures, words, and high-intense emotional feelings, the pins are stuck in there, you remember it. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to actually put 5 things. Number 1 will be here. Number 2, step here. 3, step here. 4th step to remember somebody's name here. And the 5th step is here. Okay. Number 1, here's a little clown. We're going to take a little clown, and we're going to draw his face here, this little clown. What you do, the first step is when you look at somebody, you give them a silly name, like Miss Big Ears, or Mr. Big Nose, or Mr. Scar on his face, or Miss Duck Waddle. You give them a silly name. That makes them become less than, or more than just a blur person. Then you ask them, who do I have the pleasure of speaking to? And you actually find out their name. And as soon as you find out their name, you spray can it with a little spray can, like graffiti all over a building. You spray it all over their forehead. In your mind, you spray paint their name all over their forehead. Like Joe Smith, you actually would spray paint Joe Smith on top of, in your mind. Okay, now, what you do is, then you make a silly picture of it. You rhyme it, or you get something that sounds like it. For example, Joe, you could picture a big clump of dough in this eye, and a big Smith's hammer hitting on this eye. And you could put a bottle of jam for J, which you learned earlier in my alphabet thing, and a sun here, which is their first initials. So basically, you could have jam in their eye and sun coming out. That locks their first initials, J and S. Then now if this picture is, there's 2 ways to make up silly pictures that's really powerful. If Mother Goose was inside this picture, and a sound speaker was in this other one, you would remember the 2 ways, either rhyming or sounds like. If something sounds like it, you'd remember it. Then what you do is you take their name, say some dough, in the shape of a letter J, stuck in a Smith's hammer, and you would stick it in a familiar place. Like if they had a big nose, you'd actually stick the dough coming out of the person's nose, big dough, and a Smith's hammer pounding it. Then what you do is you set up a room that you meet them in, and number 1, you put some dough and a Smith's hammer coming out, hitting you from position 1 in the room. Position 2 would be there, position 3 would be there, 4 would be here, 5 would be here. So the first person you meet would go in corner 1 as a picture. The second person would be 2. The third person would be 3, 4, 5. 6th person would go here, 7 would go here, 8, 9, and 10. So a quick review. Here's what you do. You link to a location with pictures, words, and high-intense emotional feelings. You create a silly name. You give them a silly name, a little nickname. Then you find out what their name is by asking them what is their name. You stick it on their forehead. And then you create a silly picture by rhyming the name or getting something that sounds like it. And then you stick the initials in their eyes. And then you stick that silly picture somewhere on their face. If they have a big ear, put them on their big ears. And then you stick it in a room, in a little corner of a room, and lock them together. So 10 people would be locked around, and then you do 10 more would be right underneath the other 10, and you get 10 more. That's how I remembered an entire audience. I taught this grocery chain in Texas how to remember names and faces of people. And I taught 96 managers how to remember names and faces. And they were then able to remember like one name per day. And that ended up about 2,880 names per month, times the magic number of 250. The average funeral contains 250 people. That's your influence number. So they were influencing like 780,000 people a month. So that really beat their advertisement budget, and it allowed them to make more money with less advertisement. So I hope you enjoyed that. And then again, contact me at wbprotime@gmail.com. And if you enjoyed that, then see my other videos and tell some other people to see it and contact me. I got some correspondence courses that cover 5 links to form a memory bridge, unlimited locais, 5 ways of making up silly pictures, of which you've learned 2, and then words based on your goals, and 3 ways to intensify your feelings. We also cover power at numbers, and then how to speed read and remember what you read up to rates of 400 words a minute. Well, thank you very much. Contact me at wig, ball, puppy, rug, ox, tent, ink, milk, egg, a little hat, thing of gas, and poured in some milk, or poured into mail, hitting a little dot with a company. Have a great day. Bye-bye.